I'll give you a minute, each of you, to introduce your organizations. Starting with you, Harsha.
Thanks, Chetan. I am Harsha Vardhan Agarwal from Imami. Imami was started by two friends, my father, Mr. Radheshyam Agarwal, and his childhood friend, Mr. R.S. Goenka, in the late 70s, when maybe entrepreneurship was not so much looked upon as they were in job. They started this company, and now Imami is a well-diversified conglomerate with its interest in FMCG, edible oil, hospital, paper, retail, and real estate. I am involved in the FMCG part of the business and take care of the family interest there. The FMCG business, Imami Limited, consists of some of the leading brands like Jhandu, Fair and Handsome, Navratna, Boro Plus, Kesh King, Fast Relief. I am very happy to be part of this August gathering and look forward for this interesting chat. Thank you.
We look forward to as well. What about you, Kulin?
Hi everyone, I'm Kulin Shah. First of all, I would like to ask all of you present out here, I'm sure you guys work with some or the other organization or you're running an organization. How many of you do you know that you have a healthcare program that's given by your organization? Can you please raise your hand? And how many of you actually remember who your partner is? I don't see any fingers going up except for one or two people. And this is the problem that we are solving today. Today, Indian SMEs are not empowered when it comes to providing employee health benefits. And we are on a mission to democratize health benefits for the 63 million SMEs that are there in India today. We are on Surety, and on Surety is India's first and only self-serve employee healthcare benefit platform, which is now providing a comprehensive health benefit suite, including healthcare services and insurance, all in one small monthly subscription, like an OTC platform. And we work with about 2,000 companies today.
So basically, by asking that question, you've ensured that you have about 200 customers.
Yes, that's us.
All right. So how old is your organization, Harsh?
So we started in around early 70s, so somewhere around 45 years is what I would say.
45 years. Yeah. So you're 45 years old. What about you?
We are a COVID baby. We started the company in May of 2020.
So you're 2 years old. I just want to get the record straight. They both look the same age. But that having been said, this is an enterprise which is 45 years old, and that's an enterprise which is 2 years old, which really will be the genesis of our talk for today. Harsh, are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem. The problem with the legacy is that they are comfortable. They're not supposed to be comfortable, yet they're comfortable simply because there seems to be, in the perception, a sense of entitlement, a sense of having somebody else having done the hard work and you being a beneficiary of that. That's what brings in the comfort. वो कहते ना कि ये बड़े लोग हैं, इनको क्या दिक्कत हो सकती है, लेकिन शायद बड़े लोगों को दिक्कतें भी बड़ी होती हैं. What's your take on that?
See, yes, I totally agree with you. No organization, or I would say nobody as leaders, should enter into complacency. Because I think the times are changing, consumer needs are changing, and from that perspective, no organization can only remain in its past glory. I think it's very important for each of them to understand, to evaluate what is going to happen in future, how to embrace them, how to change, how to adapt, And in our organization, I think this motto is very clear that, again, we can't stay with the past. We always have to move forward. We always have to look forward towards the future. And I believe, adaptability is the most important theme, which I think companies like us who have been there for many years, who cannot just believe that, yes, now we are successful or now we are having good profit and hence we can continue or this situation is going to continue. So, how do you push adaptability and change as an agenda in your company is something, which we do to ensure that, yes, though we are comfortable, but at the same time we are agile and we are changing to the needs, the needs of the time.
I noticed, Kulin, you've been a very patient listener to what Harsh was saying. Yet, perhaps one gathers that patience is not the best virtue in case of a startup. I mean, they often say that if you actually become patient in a startup, you become a patient, right? Because you need a sense of unacceptance, a sense of energy all the time. You need that impatience to be able to keep doing things. Is that true?
Absolutely, right. So, the topic that we are talking about, been thinking about it, and if you go to see, legacy actually is the mother of disruption, right? When actually someone gets impatient, someone starts questioning that why are we doing the way we are doing? Because most of the time we become numb, right? We become numb to norms. We become numb to the way we are doing things. We become numb to saying that this is okay, right? And I think that's the very cause where, say startups come in, or no, and I'm not saying only startups disrupt. I'm saying in big companies will disrupt, right? Because they want to be more than what they are already, right? And I think that's where I think being impatient is for the first time a good virtue to have, right? And this is where we've started feeling that even in an organization like ours, right, where insurance has been a 100-year-old or a 200-year-old concept, health has been a very, very old concept. I don't know how to date it back also. But how do you kind of, put these things together and tell people that there is more to what you're already doing today? So I think, yes, impatience is something that drives, disruption and keeps fueling it. And every now and then you'll start seeing things being done differently.
It's also something that drives a television anchor, because I've got to cover 42 years of experience in 29 minutes. So obviously I have a time on hand. So I'm going to do this on a point basis, try to pick up aspects and elements. So the second element that comes to mind is a word called flexibility. Over your experience, Harsh, do you feel that in a legacy brand, flexibility is compromised? Because you have a system in place, you have people in place, you have a process in place. While that's good to have it in place, but sometimes it needs to be displaced. And that's where flexibility perhaps is warranted, and you may feel yourself short of it. Do you agree?
Yes, Chetan, I think to an extent, yes. For a larger organization, a lot of things are at risk as well. And hence that fear of failure or doing something wrong which has a larger impact on the organization, which reduces the flexibility. And hence, it is important that without giving up flexibility, how organizations can adapt again to this changing need. So it's not that, in a larger organization, the processes are not needed. I think processes are very much needed for every organization. And the flexibility is not there, or it is restrained because of the processes which are there. But at the same time, you have to understand the needs, and then maybe why don't you adapt to it in maybe having a kind of a separate team system where if flexibility is what is needed, agility is what is needed, then you give that to those teams to ensure that the overall goals, overall the objectives to grow are met.
You know, on the other side of this, Kulin, you don't have a problem of flexibility. You're just 2 years young. But you could have the problem of over-flexibility, which essentially means at some level you make compromise on discipline. You make compromise on consistency, which is important. Just, you know, there is this aspect that you need to change for the sake of changing at times. That's a pressure that comes to a lot of startups. And that's where over-flexibility perhaps becomes a nemesis. Have you ever faced that?
Actually, no. Right. I think flexibility, agility is something that we thrive upon, right? And there's nothing like, and honestly, there's nothing like over flexibility because you're always continuously experimenting, right? Yes, what gets sometimes, over by oversight is processes, right? Because you're so much challenging things all the time, right? That you want to kind of keep doing things in a different way. I think the biggest pressure that we would have today is not failure, but the biggest pressure would be, are we doing enough to kind of scale our product, right? I think with Harsh's organization, I think scale is not even a question, right? Harsh would just launch a product and I'm telling you there will be a line of people who are ready to buy it. But I think that's where startups need so much of flexibility, right? We need to keep doing testing, right? What's working, what's not working, what's working, what's not working. Keep optimizing and then kind of, keep going out there and making sure that we have the right formula. And so yeah, over flexibility, no. Flexibility is a boon for us because, to be honest, we have nothing to lose, right? The only thing we have to lose is our customers' trust. And that is the place where we don't compromise on flexibility. That's the place that is sacrosanct for us. Customer experience, right? Our brand promise to the customers, right? That is where we don't show any kind of flexibility, any kind of a compromise. But I think everything that is peripheral, which means that, hey, I need to go ahead and do something extra, right? Which means that if there is a customer who needs, and if a team member is not there, do I need to go? That's okay, right? We would land up at the place where the customer is and, help him out, right? So, yeah.
It's really interesting because both of you mentioned the word fear, both of you mentioned the word failure, which perhaps is a lead-in for my next question. And that is this very aspect, Harsh, for you, the baggage aspect. Your decisions at times could emanate from preventing failure, the fear of failure. His decisions would come purely from the need to succeed, which allows him the ability to be slightly more futuristic, which allows you the ability to be slightly more conservative. But has it ever impacted your decisions? Do you feel that somewhere down the line, you need a little bit more of freedom?
Yes, I would say yes, that fear of failure is always there. But at the same time, I think for any organization, they need to understand and learn that only with failure you learn. So in fact, what we push through in our company also now is fail, learn with it, and try again, and that perseverance is very, very important.
And don't repeat it.
Yes, of course, you cannot repeat the mistakes. But yes, you cannot be scared of, that, yes, since it might fail and hence I will not try it. And hence, even in our company, there are few things where, like consumer trust is very, very important. So there, how do we protect that? But at the same time, how do we try newer things? How do we ensure that we are learning in the process of trying new things and learning through it? I think that is very important for us.
I think that's a brilliant, observation. And as what, President Kalam had said that FAIL is an acronym for the first attempt in learning. You've got to continue how to learn. Now, but he has a problem perhaps with the fear of failure and baggage. You don't have that problem. But you could have the problem of inexperience. Because experience has a huge cost attached to it. The cost of learning, which could be very prohibitive, which could actually run you out of business. Do you ever fear that? The possibility of having the cost of experience being just too high?
Absolutely, right? So all of us, and especially, younger organizations, I would just not say startups because, then I'm not isolating any new organization or any new business which is coming up, right? Any new business that is being set up, right, is always on a tightrope, right? You have limited resources, you have limited time, and you have limited, runway. And now, if you are going to, not act fast, then you are definitely doomed. Because you need to keep reacting, you need to keep optimizing, you need to keep, keep learning as fast as you can. And I think that is a fear that I would sleep every day in the night with, saying that, hey, you know what, how can I learn more tomorrow? If I want to learn more tomorrow, then what are the things that I need to do extra tomorrow so that I can learn faster, right? What is the team that I need to build that can bring in that experience that I don't have or my other co-founder does not have? Can we kind of start plugging those in experiences, right, with the right experience? And that experience can come either self-experience, where we kind of keep learning, or getting the right people on board. So yes, inexperience or not knowing, not seeing an entire business cycle sometimes is something that is a reality.
It's interesting how we've covered a lot of F-letter words, right? We started with flexibility, we went on to fear, we went on to the futuristic part, and I'm going to choose one more, which is very critical in terms of a differentiation often of a legacy and a newbie. And that F-letter word is the word family. By and large, you mentioned the word friend, which also becomes family, that your organization started off with two friends. And that's the way a lot of organizations start off. Not necessarily professionals, but two friends. It's a relationship or a family, an enterprise. But if you look at the history of legacies, family organizations rarely run beyond generation 4. 3 or 4 and they just dissolve. And the reason for that, perhaps, and I'm hazarding a guess out here, is that a family business involves decisions beyond commercial sense, beyond financial logic. It hinges a lot on emotion. An emotion which involves pride, ego, envy, legacy, divisiveness, and that's in many ways what becomes a huge challenge, an impediment. Frankly, have you faced this?
See, what I would say, globally, if we see a very large percentage of the overall business ownership is with the families and many successful companies. I think what the success lies behind is that you need to very clearly differentiate between ownership and management. And I think we have been fortunate enough that from the very beginning, our parents, our family have believed in that, where just being owners, we don't believe that we have the right to manage the company and bring in many of the challenges which you were mentioning into the whole scheme of things. So how do you differentiate between the ownership and management is something, if you are able to adapt, then there are a lot of advantages of having the right mix of professionalism along with the ownership or the family ownership. Many times the risks which maybe an owner can take, the professional might not be able to take. And hence, that the right balance of the professional and the ownership sometimes can, I would say, grow the business much faster and help the business grow. But yes, I think the important part is to keep these two separate the ownership and the management.
Which is far easier than done. But thank you for highlighting that aspect. I think it's a very noble thought, but in practicality, we've seen so many business families actually dissolve, dissolve, and even disintegrate because of that. Now, you mentioned a little while earlier, Kulin, about the team playing aspect, the need of the right team. And if you look at enterprises across the globe, the biggest challenge for a new company, and I happen to own one myself, is to build that right team. And the reason for that is the absence of trust. And that's where perhaps sometimes you want family to be there. So at one age, family becomes a dissonating factor because of that emotions. On the other hand, the family aspect brings in a trust, an inane trust, brings in a bond, which at times may not be experienced by the newbie organization. So do you think that that somewhere down the line is a disadvantage? Because building the right team, as you would agree, it's not about having the right resources as much as building the right team, which is going to see you through.
Absolutely. I think for any new organization, building the right team is the path to success, because everything is a function of the people who are there in the organization, right? People create processes, people create products, people create profitability, right? And hence having the right people in the organization is one of the biggest challenge that we face day in and day out when we are interviewing, when we're having a discussion, be it a person who's joining as a fresher or be it the person who's joining at a leadership team. Because you would be lucky if you knew them from before, right? But not always for every position would you know people, right? In your own, professional circle or people whom you've known earlier. So it's a lot of time it's a gamble. It's a more of a good decision that is making them meet a lot of people, and it works out. But the kind of impact that a wrong hire can have in an organization is disastrous, right? Right from the culture of the organization to, the way you're building the product, the way you're kind of taking it to the market, right? You need to have the right people. And like you rightly said, that is what the one thing that we continuously keep focusing on. We continuously, keep making sure that the people who are a part of our journey today, right? We don't treat them as resources or subordinates. We treat them as equals, because we want that each and every one of them who is working in an organization has similar amount of ownership that the founders have today, right? Because they have left their comfortable, possibly their comfortable jobs to be a part of a madness, right? And I think that's the culture that we need to kind of build. And for that, the right people and getting them is a challenge.
Absolutely. The Beatles said you can't buy love. Well, today, the theory is you can't buy people. You've got to nurture love. You've also got to nurture people. I think that's a very, very telling point. Thank you for that, Kulin. Now, if you look at the dissimilarities, another one that comes to mind is the difference between cash earn and cash burn. Right? Typically, a legacy, you try to view it as an organization that focuses on earning cash, on the bottom line. A newbie, in its desire to impress, because here he's only trying to impress the customer, well, majority the customer, he's trying to impress both the customer as well as the investor in equal proportion. Sometimes it's more the investor than the customer. And that's where the theory of cash burn comes into play. Whereas with him, he's looking at the bottom line and at cash earn. So I'm going to throw this question on to you, because I feel you have a more challenging task on hand, dealing with two stakeholders out here. How much is the element of a cash burn to your advantage? How dissuasive it is for your progress? Because you can run out of cash.
Absolutely. So, organizations, let us take two parts of newbies, like you kind of call them, right? One are which are bootstrapped and one which are funded by investors. I think bootstrap companies are completely conscious about, where they're kind of investing their money and how they're kind of, growing. And they choose to be sometimes bootstrap because saying that, hey, you know what, we don't mind taking sometimes a little bit of more time to kind of grow. But for companies which are invested into, which have capital, and I don't mean unlimited capital at disposal, but they have some capital to kind of grow fast. And I think, yes, in that, when you have capital, you are also having the expectation that how are you going to deploy that capital, right? I wouldn't call it cash burn, because for the simple reason that every time that you're spending that money, right, is actually going behind growth. If you are actually investing it behind improving your product, right? Yes, are your revenues matching your cash burn? Not always, because you're a new organization. Sometimes you are spending money to create better experiences, which will pay off in the future, right? And hopefully someday, OnSurety also will be a 45-year-old organization, and we will be having a large, customer base also.
I'll take you up on that in a while from now, but looking at bottom line perhaps is also a good strategy, simply, and it would have worked very well if you were doing that during COVID. Because that's the way that you can actually conserve a lot of your business. Did you have that experience? Were you able to put that into practice?
To me?
Yeah.
See, I think bottom line ultimately, or making profit, is the objective of all businesses. Be it a legacy company or startup. I think what is only different is at what stage each of the company is. Maybe the startup is at an investment stage where they are more driving towards the growth. And for legacy company, obviously, it's both. Of course, they have to drive growth, and of course, they have to drive profit as well. So, in fact, yes, for any company, hence, profitability is important. Even for us, that has always been there, even during the COVID period. Yes, how do you ensure with so much of uncertainties, when suddenly COVID happened and, everything shut down. So where you didn't have any clue what's going to happen after 1 month. So yes, how do you ensure that many things didn't get disturbed? First of all, your employees. Second, yes, the overall performance of the company, etc. But yes, as a company, I think we could manage it well. And profit has grown only since then.
Wonderful. I've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to pace things up a little bit. One different factor between both of you in terms of a target is one needs to get wealthy, the other needs to stay wealthy. So I want a round of the house to understand, or help me understand, which do you think is more difficult, to get wealthy or to stay wealthy? How many of you feel that getting wealthy is more difficult than staying wealthy? Could you just raise your hand? All right, just a few people. How many of you feel staying wealthy is more difficult than getting wealthy? It seems to be a 50-50. What about you, sir?
I think nothing comes easy, is
Right.
what I would say. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy, or becoming wealthier. See, even wealthy people always want to become wealthier. So yes, both has its own challenges. And I think yes.
What about you? You're at phase 1 right now.
I think it's all about perspective, right? Getting wealthy and staying wealthy, both of them, if you get comfortable with staying wealthy, right, then what are you, then I think this is exactly the topic, right? Are you becoming in your own way a legacy, saying, मैं wealthy हूँ, right?
Right.
But I think there is no stopping, and I don't mean wealthy only from a material perspective, right? But when you talk about wealthy, and it's a continuous journey, right? If you are innovating, you're always getting wealthy. You will never stay wealthy. You'll only keep getting more and more wealthy, right? So I think that would be my answer, saying that you're always in the journey to getting wealthy. You're never in the destination of saying, I've become wealthy.
One of the critical differences between the two is that both of you who get wealthy or stay wealthy require to take right decisions. To stay wealthy, you've got to take a lesser number of bad decisions. Think about it. The lesser number of bad decisions you take, the wealthier are able to stay. Okay, picking up the pace again. I'm going to take 5 elements and I'm going to ask both of you on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 means favorable and 1 is least favorable. How do you think India is for a legacy brand and for a startup? Starting with you, Harsh, laws, 1 to 5. What number would you give it? 4. Means it's favorable. What about you?
I think the kind of disruption that we are doing, I would put it at 3.
3. Number 2, policies, government policies.
4.
Wow. 8. What about you?
Actually, the kind of sector that we are in would definitely say 4.
4. 7. So 8 to 7. The third would be the society's mindset.
I would say again 4.
12. 12 to 7. What about you?
I'll put it 2 because, every disruption she sees a lot of, resistance, right? Because sometimes no one wants to try something new. People are just comfortable with what they have. So I think mindset change is required, and that's what we are fighting for at the end of the day. So 2.
All right. What about education? That's 12 to 9. What about education and awareness? What would you put that on a scale of 1 to 5?
I think in our industry, particularly in the FMCG, I would rate it as 3.
3. It's 15. What about you?
I think I was going to go for the same number 3 because the kind of industry that we are, people just have no idea of what's happening except for things in silos. So 3.
All right, 15 to 12. My final point is professionalism in this country. What about you? See?
I would again rate it as 4.
4. 16 to 12. And you?
3.
3. 15. So by and large, if I take an analysis of 16 to 14, India seems to be more wired to accept a legacy brand vis-a-vis a newbie. That's the ethos of my analysis in a very simple mathematical. But then, of course, this is a program. And we know that the hard realities are far more different. I have 5.5 minutes to go. So I'm going to do one final exercise. And I'm going to ask you to just swap your seats. You just interchange your seats.
Is he becoming Kulin Shah?
Do you like this seat better?
It's nice and warm.
What about you, Harsh? Do you like?
comfortable.
All right. So I'm going to ask you. I'll start with you, Kulin, because you're closer to me, proximity. Imagine onsurety as being a 45-year-old brand. What are the things that you'd be doing right now? What are the first things that come to mind?
I would be questioning whether I'm innovating. I would be questioning whether our flexibility is being questioned from an innovation perspective. Are we kind of really meeting the customers' demands? Are we really still providing that same experience or even better, right? Is our brand really that brand that we started off with? And are we, are we delivering the vision, or have we got strayed, right? I think those are questions that I'm asking myself right now and saying, hey, it's time up. There are a lot of companies out there who are disrupting, and what am I doing at this point of time?
So the seat is not that warm as you think it is, right? It's hot.
Not anymore.
What about you, Harsh? I mean, look at a brand called Imami, which nobody knows about. It doesn't exist. And tomorrow you've got to start building things from scratch. What would you do?
I think, I believe consumer is the king. And hence, I think what is most important is to understand or to identify a very latent consumer need and put all the energy and effort towards solving that rather than trying to make money. So over, it will be all about, how do you identify and solve a consumer need gap, right? Obviously for that, you need to go and meet the consumers, spend a lot of time with them, and with those insights, try and identify a problem. So that becomes the basic thing. Obviously, post that, yes, making a team who can then execute and deliver on that is something which is very, very critical. So these are the two most important things, which I believe, I would do in case I have to start all over.
Now, I'm going to end off by a narrative. And I run a commercial organization in the education world called Edumate, which connects the education world, and a philanthropy also which educates the girl child. And I conducted a campaign, last year, and that was to understand what is entrepreneurship among students, and whether they're interested in being an entrepreneur. And about 20% of the people responded to say they want to become an entrepreneur. I said, wow, that's a huge amount of people. But save your breath there. The reasons that came out were even more intriguing. The reasons for becoming an entrepreneur amongst the student was, I don't want to do a 9-to-5 job. I want to be a master of my own will. I cannot work under anybody. I am the son or the daughter of a businessman, so I have to do business. I am the daughter of a son of a government servant. I have to prove him wrong, so I need to do business. Those were the thoughts for entrepreneurship. Where do you think they went wrong? Where was the misdirection? And I tried to delve deep into it to understand. And for me, you know what is the biggest impediment as an entrepreneur, or the thought of a student, was that all these fallacies started with the word I. And I brought in ego. And if ego comes into play, you stop yearning. If you stop yearning, you stop learning. And if you stop learning, you stop earning. And the second facet of this word I was entrepreneurship has nothing to do with I. It has to do with you. Unless I'm able to observe you, look at your need, look at your pain point, what am I going to fulfill? And that's why I felt there was such a detachment in the word. When we studied at Harvard, they defined entrepreneurship as a relentless pursuit of an opportunity with resources beyond your control. And the operative words out here are relentless. You've got to be constant, consistent, committed. Resources are limited, which means you've got to be efficient all the time. And it's beyond your control, which means you've got to be creative at every single juncture. And that's why entrepreneurship is not just a difficult word to spell. It's not just a difficult word to pronounce. It's a very difficult word to experience. And it is an exceptionally difficult word to excel in. And that's why I require a round of applause for Kulin Shah and Harsha Agarwal for being such splendid entrepreneurs as they are today. Google has said that in half a decade from now, half the jobs of the world are going to be lost. They haven't told us which half, right? But it's because of that half which is missing in a country which houses the world's youngest population and the oldest of civilizations, that you will need job seekers in a far less number that you have as opposed to job creators. You need people who are going to create jobs, like these two gentlemen out here. Because job creation and entrepreneurship is not about profit. It's about creating value. It's about taking accountability of your own lives. It's about a mindset of making yourself responsible. So if you have got to coalesce the legacies of the West and try and match it with the enterprise of India, then you have a world which has got all the C's in place: creativity, commitment, collaboration, and correctiveness. And that, ladies and gentlemen, makes the ideas of India. Thank you for being a very participative audience. Thank you for your time.
ये है Ideas of India.